quorum, so we will start with our Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we will move right on to approval of agenda. We do need a motion.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second. Probably moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Passes unanimous. Oh, my goodness. All right. Consent agenda. Do you need another motion?
Move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
Properly moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor? All right, any opposed? Passes unanimous. Thank you. I will not skip you tonight, Dr. Rodriguez. Superintendent's report.
If we ended the meeting early, we would have been fine. So,
I was trying.
all right, we got several pieces this evening, and one of the first things that I just want to mention, we were trying to get some students here, but we've got a lot of things going on, obviously, and so with some of these folks, but I did want to mention that we did have 3 of our cross-country girls make it to state, and so they did get to compete at the state level, and my understanding is at least 2, if not all 3, actually achieved personal records and personal goals while they were there in terms of their individuals. So Savannah McClurg, Ciara Martinez, and Yvonne Mucho, all 3 made it to state. And so again, we'll try to get them here at some point in time to make sure that we get to celebrate them anytime that happens, and our students are representing us in state level competitions. We want to make sure that we highlight that. So congratulations to them, and they did do a wonderful job there and did their best. A lot of stuff going on in the district, a lot more activities kind of thing. We do have our musical that's coming up. You might remember last year we were able to do a few things even while we were closed. We had a fantastic play that was done virtually. And so some wonderful things that the arts were still able to continue, even though we weren't able to do so many things in person. But back in person, and we have a full-on musical, and Tarzan begins tonight. And so hopefully you'll have an opportunity to go tonight, tomorrow night, or Saturday night. But it is wonderful. They've already done their tour of the elementaries, kind of getting some excitement going. So just it's a wonderful opportunity to see how amazingly talented our students are. And so hope you guys get a chance to do that. I have it in my cultural or in my board priorities update as well, but I was able to go to the mural dedication for the STEM project, and I sent out some information about this over the course of the last month or 2, but basically we had a client project that our students were able to work on, and it was done through the Casey STEM Alliance. And the client project was to create a mural that was really going to celebrate diversity in STEM. And so 2 of our students were actually part of the winning group. And this group that won, the mural was designed, it was created, and it is now posted actually on their building, which is over by the plaza. So we've sent out the address, and we can certainly do this again, but it will be on display. I think there might actually be a picture of it in your good news, but it is amazing what our students can accomplish. Diversity in STEM is a wonderful client project that really signifies what we're trying to do at our school in terms of our pathway. So fantastic, wonderful opportunity for our students to be recognized in our city. PD Days review, we had 2 PD Days about a week and a half ago that our teachers were able to really spend some time delving into a couple different things, and I'll go into one of my pieces, but Dr. King, I don't know if you want to just share just a little bit about how those days looked.
Yeah, so those were 2 PD days that we gave the building principals a lot of autonomy to decide based on their school improvement plans what they needed to present to their staff. We did get our PD survey results back, and 70% of our staff agreed that professional development improved their current skill set, and 84% reported that the PD was well planned and well organized in each of the buildings. So we thought that was a very kudos to the building principals for making sure that was done well in their buildings.
So again, another opportunity for us to kind of take a breath. It was a good opportunity for that, even though it's still coming to work. There's still a lot of things going on. We were able to do a variety of different things. I also, part of that PD was their cultural competency module. So taking the board through a few of those every single year. Our staff do 2 of those modules every single year. All of our staff, that's one of the required modules. So again, interesting feedback this time around with them taking the different associations of bias and still continuing our work around what unconscious bias really looks like. How does that play out with our interactions with students and things. So it's really interesting feedback as we kind of go through, but certainly it was fun to create, but kind of again, pushing the envelope of where we need to go with the work throughout our district. And what's also neat is hearing what's happening at individual buildings. And we have individual buildings that start to push some of this work a little bit more, which is exactly what we'd hoped would happen. And then I was also able to have some conversations with some student groups. Went to the high school and talked to our students and listening to their viewpoints of, how does your culture play out in your daily interactions at the high school and throughout your experience with us, and students that are their first year there that have been with us since kindergarten. So really listening to their viewpoints and a variety of different things. And then my hope is to include some of our students in the creation of our module that we'll do for April, and that they will either be a part of that or even help present some of that information. So really exciting to have those conversations. I wanted to make sure and keep you updated with that. Listening tours update, and I'll kind of finish with COVID-19, but listening tours, I presented on this in July. I talked to the staff about it in August, and basically formalizing this process of going around to all the school sites and transportation and each one of the sites, and just getting a better sense from our staff of where we are and what we need to do to improve. We've sent out a 10-question survey to the entire staff to really focus on engagement and what does engagement look like for our staff. So getting those questions answered on a survey, but then actually going in person and then pulling out a couple of those questions and asking a little bit more, tell me why you would answer in this particular way. So we get a better sense of what that looks like. Dr. Maya and I go out to these sites. She really goes through and kind of collects notes as I'm interacting with the staff. And then she's kind of putting together themes. At some point when we finish this, we will come back to the board and we'll present these with the themes that we've seen. Here are the actions associated with what we're trying to kind of move forward with. And then we'll present that back to the staff as well. And I'll look at this continuous improvement model with that. So as I presented, I've also talked to them about this is really about improvement going into the summer and next year, but there's also things that come up in there that are timely and that need to be addressed right now. And so we've been able to hear some of those things and put that into place as well to make sure that we're making adjustments as we go. So not quite done with all those tours. I hope to finish those within the next couple of weeks, but certainly it'll go into December, just a little bit before we finish that. But we've gone to several different school sites and transportation over the course of the last about 7 weeks. So it's certainly been fast and furious, but it's been very beneficial so far. I'm excited to see the information. So again, we'll bring that back, but I just kind of wanted to give you an update because it was very timely around that. All right, COVID-19 update. We continue to have a variety of different things that are happening in our area. I sent this to you in AU, but certainly want to just kind of do it in a public forum as well. So Jackson County met, and even though they had previously extended their mask mandate to November 22nd, they met last Friday and removed it. As you know, and as I mentioned, we have 2 sides to our district, one of them being on the Kansas City, Missouri side. Kansas City Health Department, and trying to make sure they were aligning with the Jackson County Health Department, went ahead and extended their mask mandate specifically just for schools and for transportation up through December 3rd. We'll see what happens at that point, whether they let that lapse or whether they extend it. But as I've told our staff, as well as the board, I'm not going to have one mandate for one part of our district and not for the other. In my mind, this needs to be throughout our entire district. We'll be unified in that regard. So we'll continue our mask mandate for now. And as I mentioned to you, we continually talk about this. I talk to the health department every single week, and we have a lot of conversation as a cabinet about what this looks like moving forward. I talked to a few parents this week as well about concerns that they have, and just trying to make sure that they remove them. And they're all legitimate, and I totally understand each one of those. We have first graders that don't know school without a mask. That's very, very challenging for many of our students. But Right now, we still have to look at the health and safety and overall and quarantine guidance and all those particular components. So we'll continue to look at this and kind of determine when that would end. It's very possible that it looks like into January, and then we look at that. One of the challenges that we also have is there is a federal mandate in place right now through January 22nd that every student that gets on a bus has to wear a mask. So that would not be within our realm until that goes away. That's not within our realm to even argue with. We don't have any jurisdiction over that. If it's a federal mandate, we have to do that. So our students would still have to wear a mask on the bus. As you can imagine, that would be a little bit more difficult to think you have to wear it on the bus, but then not in school. I'm not saying that we can't overcome that, and that's still not going to be something that we overcome. But those are the conversations that we're having right now about what will we do? How do we handle that? How would that work? I talked to a couple of principals the other day, and of course, that raises a lot of alarms of how do we make sure to handle that? Is that going to increase discipline on the bus? So just a lot of moving parts and a lot of conversations. But at the end of the day, I know we do have staff members that are still concerned about health and safety and wanting to wear a mask. And they would always have that opportunity. It would just be a recommend, not a require if we go to that. So a lot of things can happen in the next 5 or 6 weeks, as you can imagine. So we'll continue to monitor that and kind of see where it goes in the conversations with the health department. Right now, the numbers continue to go down in Jackson County. They did go up just a little bit in Kansas City, Missouri itself. So we'll watch and we'll see. I know people have talked about there's other increases in various spots, especially in lower vaccinated states. So we'll watch that and kind of see where we go. But over the course of the next 5 or 6 weeks, we'll continue to kind of review that. In terms of vaccinations, we did have a partnership with the city today. There was a vaccination event over at the City Hall that was done by Jackson County Health Department. And we looked at what we can potentially do. One of the things that we look at is availability. Right now, there are at least 10 different places for our families to go get their students vaccinated, especially the elementary students that are within 10 miles. So when we look at, should we do an event at one of our schools? Should we do an event in some kind of fashion? We're looking at, would we have anybody go? I've not had anybody inquire about us doing one. And I can tell you the Jackson County Health Department won't even right now vaccinate students at one of those events that are in elementary. They're only doing 12 and up. So I don't see that as something that I really want to do. I feel like the health department needs to take that role on. We've taken on so many things as well, but I don't really want to take on more. And so we just try to find partnerships and try to do the same thing that we've been doing before. So again, Jackson County Health, City Hall, they've been great to work with. And then we promote those same things so that people can have access. During a school day, even if we did an event at one of the schools, one of the challenges would be they won't do one at all the schools. They would want to do one at one school. And then we would have to transport anybody that wanted to do that to that. That brings up a different problem. Do we have transportation to be able to do that? Do we have enough buses? Do we have enough drivers to be able to do so? There's a lot more to it than just having an event, but certainly we keep going through to see what we need to do. I have not had any inquiries, as I said, but we still keep asking that question and kind of seeing what we need to do moving forward. So I want to make sure that people have access to the things that they choose to do. So that's kind of where we are with each one of those components. And I know it's a lot of information in terms of COVID-19, but we're trying to make sure that we stay ahead as best we possibly can of what we think is coming. So I have had several conversations with you about, we knew this was coming in terms of the mandates coming off. And so we've been having a lot of talks about when that will potentially be. So right now we're covered at least until December 3rd and no decision to make because we're under that mandate, but we'll continue to monitor that and make that available to our staff and parents whenever we make that decision. But I like to give people a little bit of notice about what's coming up so that they can make decisions on what's happening. We'll make sure that they understand that. For example, if it's going to be January, our students still have the opportunity to have a virtual option. We've had that virtual option in place for a while. And as you know, we would operate it very similar to what we did at the beginning of this year, which was, is it in the best interest of the child? We have a lot of data now that we can say, you know what, you were not successful as a virtual student. This is not right for you. Not anybody can just go virtual and be successful. And the goal is to make sure that they're being as successful as possible. We can put safety plans in place. We can do a lot of different things to make sure that we're supporting our students and our parents. But if they choose to make that decision, I think that's going to be somewhere in December into January that they could make that determination. Is that correct?
December 1st through January 13th, the window opens.
Yeah,
for
so
applying.
very similar to what we did at the beginning of the year, we have a window and then they can choose to make that decision or not based upon that. And if they choose to make that decision, there'll be individual conversations that our counselors and our administrators will have with parents. If we have new individuals that are choosing to, but there may be somebody that's been virtual first semester and then not being successful. And we may ask that person to come back in person second semester because they're not being successful. So it's really all about what's going to be in the best interest of the student and then ensure academic success. Okay, so that's a lot of information, but I'm happy to answer any questions about anything that I talked about, but I'm sure the last piece may cause a few more questions to come up.
Questions?
Is this virtual option with respect to the mask mandate that they have to continue to wear, or is that just an option that is becoming available for parents who want their children to be virtual or not?
Yes, we had the option before even COVID-19 even hit. We had a virtual option. We've changed a little bit, obviously, and modified it and improved it a lot. Our partnership with Launch, but it's specifically just a virtual option for people who want to choose a virtual option. That is my report, because I think I've got all my pieces of paper that I talked about.
So I have a question on your board priorities, just because I'm curious.
Yep.
Under cultural competency, you met with the students at the Grandview High School, and I think our leaders at our high school have a lot of really good things to say. So I was just curious as to what kind of things you heard when you met with them. It says, you know, virtual instruction, culture, etc. Just kind of curious as to some of the
Sure.
themes you heard.
Well, I asked them about, first of all, were you happy with our response to the pandemic? What'd you think? And for the most part, it was really positive. And Dr. King was there with me, so I may defer to her as well. But they were actually really happy with our response. They thought we communicated really well, and they liked the virtual kind of piece. They liked the flexibility that they had, and for the most part, they thought we did as best as we could possibly do with the situation that we were all kind of faced in. We also asked questions like our pathway model. You know, we're talking with our teachers as well. Do our students even know what we're doing? And again, we've talked a lot about communication in this district and trying to make sure that we're communicating a little bit differently. And so when we talked about, do you even know what the pathway models are? Do you even know that they exist? And for the most part, they knew that they existed. Now, the percentages went down in terms of could they really understand and then actually tell us what that was. Some fully on, you know what, I'm on this, I'm in this path, I know this, I'm good. And then some like, well, I've heard about it. I don't really know what that means, but I did hear about this because we had a presentation about it. So it gave us some information of how do we present this differently to all of our staff, as well as our students and our community. So that was one of the questions that we asked. We asked about how relevant do you see your high school education in connection to your life after high school? Again, that relevancy piece. And that was kind of a mixed bag as well. Probably 65% put it in the top two categories, and then a lot kind of right in the middle. So again, we're always looking at that kind of piece. I mentioned that I asked about their cultural background and how it's impacted their life at Grandview High School, and a mixture there. Some said it hasn't really impacted at all. Some talking about that it really had impacted because I'm bilingual, or when I've come in, I've actually been celebrated, you know, because that was the other question is, you know, you have this culture that you belong to in some way. Do you feel like it's celebrated within the school? And I heard the staff is amazing. I heard a lot of different comments about we feel supported. Our staff do a great job of making the school that way. Some that felt like it should be more celebrated more often. They feel like there's some individual things, but it needs to be spread out a little bit differently. And some interesting comments from some of the teachers as well. They're like, we need to talk to them more about this, and we need to talk to them more about this. So it gave our teachers a little bit more ideas of what they need to kind of share with them and kind of get them involved. But overall, I heard a lot of positive things about our staff, about our school, and their experiences there, which is what I hoped we would hear. But then some individual things that we thought, wow, that makes sense. One really interesting, and I'll stop with this, one interesting thing that I heard from a student was, you guys do a really good job of communicating, but sometimes you communicate with our parents and you don't communicate with us. And so our parents will know something and then they're telling us about it, and we didn't even know that. It's like, wow. So even the administrators, we were all like, you know, you're right. That's a really good thing. So in the school, I think we try to do that. When we talk about district-wide stuff, how do we communicate that? Do we need to have a district student kind of newsletter? We send out this thing that we send to our staff and everybody and our parents and stuff. We don't really send anything to the students. So unless it's their individual school, they don't necessarily know what's going on to the outer community. So that was some of the things that we would get that I think were very interesting. Again, every time we talk to kids, we find out something different. So it's awesome. Love it.
That's great. Fantastic. Thank you.
Maybe more than you wanted to know, but there you go.
No, that was perfect. That's perfect. Thank you. All right. Any other final questions? Okay. So our next item is audience participation. Do we have anyone in the audience that would like to speak on one of our agenda items tonight? Okay. And we'll move on to action.
And with the permission of Madam President, I would love to move up resource stewardship, our sale of bonds to the top here, because we have a guest that has to drive back to St. Louis area this evening, but I would love to allow them to leave as soon as possible.
Yes, please.
Okay, so we do have LJ Hart here today, and so we're going to talk a little bit about the bond thing. So turn it over to Dr. Powelson, and I'll want to introduce or say anything, but let that.
Definitely do. We was able to sell our bonds today, and Larry Hart is here to visit with us about it, how that bond sale went. So Larry, if you please lead us through and introduce your guests as well.
I'll give you some space here too.
This is Aaron McManus, senior analyst with the company. Been here 4 years. As Dr. Powelson mentioned, the sale of the bonds was successful. Aaron will go through it. We received 5 bids. This bid sheet is on the top of the extra handout. And we would suggest you maybe unclip them so she can go through the different items quickly. And we would also welcome your participation with any questions that you have or comments at any time. Don't feel shy about going ahead and asking something. This is the first part of the 45 million that was approved in April, and we're selling them in this particular part was 10 million, was reduced to 9,900,000 so that it would be bank qualified. And we think that helped the bidding situation. It will be up to the school and administration to give us input on how many we need to sell in 22 and 23. Once you have your construction manager on board and a fairly comfortable or something that you're confident in terms of what the draws will be to keep the project rolling. Go ahead, Aaron. I will.
So the first item in front of you is Exhibit A, the legal size piece of paper. This is your bid analysis. So you'll notice in the heading, we have a 4% interest rate set for all the maturities. What the investors were bidding on today were your reoffered yields to the call. And again, these are callable in 5 years, March 1, 2026. So looking down at this table, you have maturities from 2023 ranging to 2030. Bid 1, Commerce Bank was the winning bid. So their reoffered yields were ranging from 0.3% in 2023 down to 0.8% in 2030. So below that, they have the purchase price of the bonds, then the total interest cost calculated. Since these are all set at 4%, that is not going to change between bidders. And we have your discount, which is the underwriter discount of $45,738. So that is the fee that goes to Commerce. What we allowed was $74,250. So they were being very competitive in their bid. Saved you about $30,000 there. Then we have your premium that was produced of $1,106,604. This premium is used to, 1, cover all of your cost of issuance of the sale. And then 2, it's just extra money that you can use for your projects. We know construction costs have been inflating over the past year or so, so it gives you a little bit of cushion and flexibility as those bids start to come in. You have a little over the 9.9. Then we have your net interest cost on the bonds of 650,000 and your TIC, which is your average annual interest rate. So looking across bids 2 through 5, KeyBank Capital Markets came in very close, just $3,500 over the winning bidder. On 9.9 million, that's very competitive. So then we have Robert Baird about $20,000 over, BOK Financial 45,000, and Piper again about 45,000. So we're very happy.
I would mention on the Robert W. Baird bid, there were probably 8 or 9 firms that combined to be part of that bid. So although we had 5 firms bidding, if you count all the people that were participating with Robert W. Baird, it's probably 15 or 16 total.
You'll go to the next packet, 3 pages. You'll see schedule 14 at the top. This is your debt service schedule illustrating your fiscal year payments on the 9.9 million at a 4% interest rate. So you can see your payments again are ranging from 2023 all the way out to 2030. And again, we'll structure the remaining portions as they come in. We'll work closely with Dr. Powelson to determine the timeline and the structure of the remaining portions. But again, these are just going out to 2030. One other statistic I wanted to point out on this page, if you go under yield statistics, 6 lines down, bond yield for arbitrage purposes, you see 0.647%. This is actually your effective interest rate when we factor in that $1.1 million of premium that you received.
Pretty low cost of borrowing for 8 years.
You'll turn the page, schedule 14A. This is where we calculate out the premium. So you look at the 5th column, maturity value, that totals up to 9.9 million. This is what the district is repaying. If you go to the far right, dollar price, 11,606,604. This is what the district is receiving upfront. So you are not repaying the premium back to the investors. They are paying it to you upfront in order to receive that 4% interest rate, which is currently above market. They're willing to pay a premium for it. We'll turn to page schedule 14B. This is your sources and uses of funds. So again, issuing 9.9 million, add in your reoffering premium. And at the bottom, under uses, we have each of your costs of issuance broken down. So again, that underwriting fee of 45,000, we had allowed 74,250, so they reduced that. Your only annual fee is your paying agent fee of $400 setup, and then an annual fee of $300, and you're paying this on all of your existing bonds to UMB Bank. So if you subtract out all of your cost of issuance, you're remaining with $10,915,916 deposited to your construction account on December 9th. Right, the next packet.
We just had a fit meeting today, so we already spent all that.
Yeah.
All of it.
Okay, the next packet is your resolution. Again, this is the action item before the board tonight. If you'll turn first page, you'll see a large paragraph at the top in all capital letters. This mirrors your ballot language that was approved at the April election and just states the purpose of issuing these bonds, which is everything that the voters had approved and what the projects are going to be specifically. If you skip to page 6, at the very top, you see a maturity schedule, and that is exactly what we looked at previously. And the last thing I wanted to point out is on page 10. At the bottom, section 3.1, optional redemption. I just wanted to reiterate that these bonds have a 5-year call feature. So come March 1, 2026, if you are in a position to refinance or to prepay these bonds, you can do so at any time and no penalty.
We expect that that will be beneficial to you. Don't know for sure where the rates will be in 26, but I think you'll probably be pleased with the savings. So you'll be getting, you won't have to pay the 4% for the whole 8 years. You just pay it through 26. And those longer bonds can be reduced in rates or paid off early if you have the cash to do that.
Any questions about any of the numbers of the resolution?
More money is good, right?
And I did include in the back a draft news release. If this is something you wanted to submit to your local newspaper, I can send it to you by email. You can make any changes that you want.
Again, this is everything that we had hoped. We talked about it a little bit last month and allowing us the opportunity to go and authorize this. So that way this sale was today. This is everything that we've been able to do over many years. We've paid bonds down early purposely. That's one of the things that allowed us to go out for such a large no tax increase in April anyways. And so I assume that we'll probably continue doing that at the board's direction and continue to kind of follow LJ Hart's kind of recommendations around that. It's benefited us in the past, and I'm sure that it's going to continue to do so. So either way, at the end of the day today, like you said, we've got over $10 million now that we can start going forward with the rest of these projects. So very excited.
We would like to compliment Dr. Paulson, Dr. Rodriguez, and Kathy Meyer for all of the assistance they provided to help us stay on a tight schedule.
Kathy's really good at that. All right, any questions?
Two-part recommendation, then if not.
Make the recommendation that we approve agreement accepting the best bid for the 9.9 million of general obligation bond series 2021 as per the recommendation of LJ Barton Company. Number 2, approve a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of 9.900 million general bond obligation series 2021.
Second. Properly moved in second to accept the best bid and approve resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of the bonds. All in favor? Any opposed? Passes unanimous. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. We'll go back up to top and head back over to student success. Got a lot of things going on that we need to talk about and give you an opportunity to get caught up. So I will turn it over to Dr. King. I will.
So in my CNI update, I'd like to talk a little bit about a visit that we had from Doctors Bill Parrott and Dr. Kathleen Fudge, who are the 2 consultants that work closely with our district. They've come in and done a lot of work the last 3 years with the district. They were here November 10th, 11th, and 12th. And I'm just going to walk through a little bit about some of the things that they did. Just a little background on this, on those 2 individuals. Kenny is actually the one who, Dr. Rodriguez is actually the one who visited with them, introduced me to them. He was at a conference, and Dr. Rodriguez, whether you guys don't know it, will go up to any presenter that's ever presented at any conference and introduce himself and get his picture taken with them. And he introduced himself to them, and then they became friends. And so, and he was like, and I read the book, and I was like, oh, this would be so great for us to do this. And he was like, hey, I know them. I'll text them, and we'll. And anyway, so that's how it all got started. And then so he's made that connection with us, and so they've just become an invaluable part of of my professional development personally, but then also what we've been able to do with the district. So they've written several books. Their latest book on turning high poverty schools into high performing schools is what we use to base a lot of our work on, which are case studies of different districts and schools around the nation that have looked similar to ours, that have different ranging of from 35 to over 90% of free and reduced lunch. And they're able to turn their schools into extremely high performing schools for students. So in addition to that, they also are working with 2 of our elementary buildings this year on via Zoom for their building leadership teams. Last year they worked with Con West. This year they're working with Belvedere and Butcher Green. So we meet with them weekly to go over plans for their BLT with the building principal, and then they debrief with me weekly about what would be some next steps. So it's very exciting to have them in the district. So here's the agenda that we had for their 3-day visit. They had a 3-hour professional development with all of the building leaders Wednesday morning, and then we were able to then go into the high school, and they met with the high school admin team, toured a little bit, and then we actually got to attend Belvedere's the building leadership team in person, which they usually attend via Zoom. It was kind of exciting to be able to be in person with them. The next day, we met and toured buildings and met with the administration at GMS, Highgrove, and Butcher Green. It was, I'll talk a little bit more about all the things that we were able to do there. Then the following day, we met with, I forgot to mention, we also did Martin City on that day, on the 11th. And then on the 12th, we did CARE, Con West, and Meadowmere admin and building. It was just, they had an hour and a half to 2 hours in every building to sit down with the building principals and talk about it. The outcomes of their visit were this. Really, so we planned before they came to visit, like, what do we want to get out of this visit? So really looking at their school improvement plans and how to make this work with the building principals more meaningful. These were our outcomes that we were looking for with their visit. So we're looking at how do we make their work problem specific and user centered, all the work that they're doing on their SIPs. How do we focus on variation of performance? How do we focus on seeing a system that produces outcomes? Measuring the key outcomes and the processes to scale up any initiatives that they're doing in their buildings. Using discipline inquiry to drive improvement. How do we making sure we use the data that we have to drive the improvement and always going back to our root cause analysis and our problem of practice. And then finally, accelerating learning through networked improvement communities. So those were our objectives. We knew those were really high outcomes. We knew we probably wouldn't get to them all, but what we were able to do through our visits, and these are just some pictures from our visits, we were able to see where all the buildings were in terms of those outcomes. And what we did is we debriefed every night on those outcomes, looking at where each building was, and in rich conversations that you're able to see that those 2 authors were able to have with each building principal and those leadership teams. I want to point out something that's really, I think, very valuable and meaningful that's coming out of these conversations that they're having. I direct your attention to 2 of the graphs that you'll see on there. Is the buildings are actually breaking data down now to how many students do we need to move to get to our goal, rather than just saying now we're trying to get to 65% of our kids on grade level or 70% of our kids on grade level. They're now breaking that down to, if we're going to get to here, these are the students that we're going to have to move, and then they're breaking that down by skills, and they're making that out in the open. These are in data rooms, so the teachers sit and it's there all the time, and it's real to them, because in addition to just being like this, they'll actually have pictures of the kids there. So they're actually able to see these are the students. This is what we're talking about. These are not just numbers. These are students and the student outcomes that we're looking at, and being able to break it down to skill level based on their iReady and based on what they're seeing in the classrooms. So if you look at the next slide here, is what you see in green are where we still have to go. So based on those outcomes, we did a debrief on where do we see the buildings at and where are some of our next steps. So all of our outcomes, we need to see that a system that still produces current outcomes. We still need to look at our school improvement plans as a system, from a systems approach. And we still need to look at our outcomes. What is our evidence that we're getting what we need? And we talked a little bit about leading and lagging evidence now, about where are we going to be going with the evidence, and knowing that our action steps match our problem practice and we're getting what we need out of it to drive improvement. And finally, the last one, which I really thought we made a lot of progress on, is accelerating that networked improvement community, letting our administrators come together and talk and be a part of a professional learning community themselves in guiding this improvement. Next steps. So we're going to be working on these are the following next steps that I'll be debriefing with Kathleen and Bill about weekly. Is not confusing the product with the process a lot, making too many assumptions about what's going to work. Sometimes we're still trying to work on too many things at one time. We want to fix everything now, and I get that. I understand that. We need to be better at understanding the change process and what it takes to move people through the change, through change within their buildings. Sometimes we're failing to address the why and the how. We address the how or we address the why, and we need to make sure we're addressing both of them. Sometimes we're still seeing a missing link between the proposed action and the intended results. Are we seeing a direct matchup between what we say and the results we're getting? And sometimes we have too broad or vague action steps that we don't really know. What are we actually trying to get at, and can we pinpoint it down? So those are the things that we're going to be working on next with school improvement plans. And then I have a little quote for everybody. Because like this on my desk and that I look at every single day. School improvement is not a mystery. Incremental, even dramatic improvement is not only possible, it is probable under the right conditions. And making sure that we always are putting those right conditions out for buildings, making sure that our building principals are armed with what they need to be able to do that within their buildings as well as they can. Be glad to take any questions about the 3 days that we had. They were fabulous. They were wonderful days. I didn't get any emails answered back those 3 days.
But worth it, right?
It was totally worth it. Totally worth it.
I don't really have a question, but I just want to tell you, I love what I saw about them humanizing the numbers. It's not
Yes,
just
ma'am.
a number of these are the things that have to happen, but looking at the kids' pictures and their names and making it really focused like that. I love seeing that. I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
It makes it more real. I mean, it's a real thing. And we, like she said, when we talk about the percentages, that's one thing. Oh, we need to improve by this. No, we have 8 students and here are their names that need to do. And then again, breaking it down even further, it's just a higher level conversation than what we've been able to have in previous years. And so it's an incremental process, but it's exciting.
Takes the mystery out. I mean, it's real. And what are we doing every single day?
It can get really frustrating at times to go through this because you want to see so much more progress at times than what we do. But what's nice about having individuals like that and these 2 authors that go nationally and talk to a lot of different school districts and write these books about schools doing this type of work. They've been working with us now for 3 years. And one of the things that they said to us was just the amount of change and shift that they've seen in our district when they talk to our leaders and they talk to the schools. It's just dramatically different than when they first started working with us just 3 years ago. This is year 3. And so that's exciting because we don't always necessarily see that. We still always kind of look at where we need to go and how much further we need to go. And so it is nice to see and hear from people that I consider to be some of the national experts on the things that we're doing and how we're making the shifts. They continually say, we're going to be writing books about you guys. We are. We can see this happening within the school district. So it's exciting.
They felt like that trajectory was maintained through COVID. Through
Yes.
Virtual learning.
Yes, they actually said that we have made gains in terms of our knowledge and the things that we're saying, because they still came back and talked to us. We were still here, we were still working, and we were still doing all that stuff. So yes, in terms of our student success and the outcomes, yes, our students took a step backwards because of those things, but it also allowed us the opportunity to make some shifts because of our own learning and PD and things like that, to still push the envelope with leadership. And so them still coming here and working with our leaders, that's where we're seeing the biggest really improvement is they're now going into their leadership team meetings and into their PLCs and having more in-depth conversations around that. So in some ways, I feel like it did help us in terms of a leadership and a structure point. And now we're hoping that we will see the outcomes associated with that over the course of the next year or 2.
With the idea of the pictures of the kids, it's not just some random number. It's a face to it. So if you need, so you said 8 kids to hit whatever benchmark it was, but there are maybe 20 kids who aren't there, are you only putting up the 8 kids that you think are most likely to make it? Or are you putting all 20 up there?
No, ma'am, all the kids are up there. They just happen, it's a more focus on knowing these are the ones that we know and these are the skills. So how do you start grouping kids and do some response to intervention, which is like their response time or their intervention time on, these are the skills we know that we can focus on. It's a much more intentional approach to moving kids rather than just, we relied a lot as schools in bigger pictures. We rely on hope, a lot on hope of saying, I'm going to teach it and I hope they'll get it. Whereas we're not going to rely on hope anymore. We're going to rely on the teacher's knowledge of where the students are and where they're at, and knowing if I can move these 8, I'm teaching all my kids and all my kids are going to get the best, but I know if I can move these 8, we're going to reach this bigger goal. They're all obviously they're teaching all children. We're going to move all of them up, but it's just having a more targeted focus and a targeted goal for where they're going to go. And the building principals will talk a little bit more about that today when they present their SIPs, the ones that are, because that's one of that came from one of the buildings that's going to present today, of how they're looking at data a little differently and how they're looking at the student groupings a little differently to know how I start grouping kids and how I look at this in a little different way to make it more manageable. Because it just seems overwhelming if I look at 13% of my kids are on grade level and I plan to get to 65% on grade level by the end of the year. How am I going to do that? Well, if I can start looking about how I group them and where kids are strategically, then it's manageable in incremental ways. So, but yeah, they're all, if you can go in the data, they're all there and they're teaching all students for sure. Yeah.
So my question, so it sounds like it was fantastic meetings and I was super excited about it. What kind of strategies are the building leaders and the BLT team using to kind of ensure that everyone's on board with this? So, you've got some teachers out there that say, I've been doing this a long time, I know what I'm doing, I don't need anybody to help me, right? I see nods out there from administrators, right? So how are you ensuring that, this all rolls downhill and that we're all rowing the boat together?
One of the favorite expressions that Bill likes to use when he talks about this to everybody is pretending that we're all farmers. How do we make sure the last corn in the road gets the water as well? And making sure that we make that here we hold this, and our building leadership teams are making these decisions. But until the last corn gets it, it hasn't gotten there yet. And so making sure that they are constantly aware of that process. And where it doesn't all fall on them. I think the biggest thing that we find is it's reciprocal. Is this doesn't fall on them to make all this change happen. It's this building leadership team. Yes, it obviously rides because I go to them and I say, hey, where's this going to be? How's this going to work out? But them knowing that they have this team and then looking forward to that network of administrators that they can start pulling from and working together from as well. I think makes this work more doable to them as well. But it's a constant. It's constant knowing that communication piece. And I thought I communicated that not as well as you thought, or it's not, the message isn't being received in the same way. So one of it's looking at that big change process and how does change work? And when change doesn't work, what was missing? Was it the vision didn't get? What did teachers don't have the resources to be able to do it? Did they not receive enough professional development? And then so when you take this matrix and you go through all these things, did I paint the vision? Did I communicate it? Do we have the resources? Did I train them? All of these things, then it comes down to a skill and will at that point. Is there other issues that I need to address as the administrator beyond that? But there's so much that goes into the change process and making sure that we are so versed in it as the leaders before you try to lead it yourself.
Sounds like it slides right in the 30, 60, 90-day plan type.
That was the
stuff.
plan.
It does.
It's almost like that was set up.
It was almost like it was.
Perfect. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Move us in.
Awesome.
So I hope you see parts of this and some of the conversations in these next 30, 60, 90-day plans that that these three administrators will present to you tonight. So the first one I have for you tonight is Dr. Harris, Dr. Jennifer Harris, who's going to present for Martin City K-8, her SIP plan.
Good evening. And I do have, I'm Jennifer Harris, by the way. Thank you for allowing me to be here this evening. I do have just a small token. So when you look at these posters, please
You
think
guys
of
paying
Martin
attention
City.
out there? I'm just
Think of
saying.
Martin City
Accept
K-8.
gifts.
Send us all your happy thoughts that we can. And know that we're working hard to make everybody proud. And I wouldn't leave all of you out.
It's amazing.
She did talk to her boss about
I did. I did.
These in our copy.
You're welcome. Okay, so good evening, everyone. It's truly an honor and a privilege to be here this evening. I do have my two assistant principals here as well. I'd like to introduce them. Mrs. Quincy Dacus and Dr. Justin Larmy are here to support as well. And I couldn't do this work without their dedication for children and change too. So here's my presentation this evening. I just want to start off by saying my second year at Martin City, there's a lot of work to be done. I had to design my building leadership team, and very carefully did I design that through an application process, but I really wanted the right people on board to analyze our culture and our historical data and really work on our current reality. So, and moving on, really this work began with background of root causes and digging deep into where are our school improvement issues. And so that messy graphic over there is kind of one piece of the work where we kind of dove into our one problem of practice, which really leads into the achievement. And we've figured out that we had a lack of consistent, high quality tier 1 instruction across the board in every classroom. We had irregular conversations with families and partnerships, and we had inconsistent expectations for social and emotional support. And as we dove into the data, it just became more and more clear that these were our three areas where we really needed to focus. And here's just some school data for you. Our attendance data right now, and this is current, we're about 90.2%. So we're proud of that. We would like for it even to be a little bit higher than that, but that's a good solid number for right now. Discipline data, this is just one area of our discipline, and it's the disrespectful conduct and speech. We had 42 incidents K through 8, which is 5% of our enrollment. So it's of course higher, any number is off from where we would like to be. But we are kind of cautiously optimistic that that number is going to level off and decrease as we go through the school year. Our ready data. So this is kind of our baseline from this year so far. This was our fall scores. And I broke it down by reading and math for K5, and then the next one is 6-8. But as you can see, we are not where we would like to be. We have too many students that are 2 to 3 years behind, and not enough that are scoring on or above grade level. So this is where a lot of our work is centered. And so K5, we're about 18% in reading and only 8% in math. Thank you. And then for reading level, and this is 6th through 8th grade, we're about 26% proficient in reading, and in math, just about 14%. So this is a main focus in helping students to really build these skills. These are skill deficits, and iReady is very good at diagnosing where students need to work. And so we really utilize that program well. And next comes down to our problem of practice. So there's 3 problems that we are addressing through our school improvement plan at Martin City. The first one is our students are not meeting reading proficiency at grade level. The second one is students are in need of social emotional learning to maximize their receptiveness to academic content. So really just being ready to be a learner. And then the third one is, do we have adequate connectedness and partnerships with families and community? So that's another problem that we're addressing. And then this moves into my next 3 slides here are 3 school improvement goals, and then our 30, 60, 90-day breakdown, and then some outcomes and evidence. So the first goal here was to strengthen equitable core 1 instruction across the board. And our goal this year is to reach 60% in iReady proficiency in reading. And so our 30-day plan, we really started with our PLCs and how are we going to grow? How are we going to work together and collaborate to meet the needs of our students? And one major move that we incorporated was our student data notebooks. So students are involved more in their learning. They're keeping track of their learning. They all have notebooks that have their data in there, and they're able to progress along the way and monitor their own learning with their teachers. We also moved into a lot of PD, and this is kind of over the last 90 days, really, with Learning Science Institute and really understanding how to set learning standards and apply rigorous instruction and learning tasks that go along with that objective. And so that's been a huge shift that we've seen in the building, and one that I'm very proud of, actually. We've done a lot with collaboration meetings. So in the past, we did not have good meetings with all services. So we didn't have our special education teachers and our English language learner teachers in those meetings. And this year we've been very intentional, including all support, so that we're really talking about students' progress. We're moving into more collaboration of proficiency skills and what performance looks like and how students are actually doing on the content that we're teaching them. And then just some evidence there. All students have a notebook. Some are hard copies and binders. Others are electronic, kind of depending on what grade levels chose to do. We have observable change in our learning targets and success criteria that's posted in classrooms. And we have very effective conversations now during our PLCs. And then the second one here was to address our SEL needs of students to maximize that receptiveness. We want to reduce the referrals down to 70 by the end of the school year. That's top notch. That's what we want. And we've done a lot to support our kids this year. So we've done very specific counseling lessons. We have advisory, we have classroom meetings, things like that. We brought in our BIS consultant to do kind of an overall BIS training with all staff, just a refresher, excuse me, for some, and some hadn't been trained at all. So that was very good. We're doing a school-wide book study on culturally responsive teaching and the brain, which really focuses a lot on learning gaps and how all children can succeed if we have high expectations for them. So my BLT did the book last year and really wanted all teachers to do it this year. And we also are really concentrating on what it is that we're doing for students. So deliberate with some assemblies that we're doing. We started a student ambassador club just to get more students involved in helping other kids. We're using our student leaders to help us to hold assemblies for expectations and having students share out what those look like. The next one. Okay. And then the third goal here is to increase our connectedness and partnerships with parents and community. This is a personal focus of mine. It's part of my own principal improvement plan, if you will, too, because we really do not have good partnerships with our parents. Part of that is because COVID, and we wouldn't let them in the building at all last year. And now we're trying to partner again. So, and as well as the community. So we've done some things to reach out. We're hosting some family nights that really bring in community resources to assist them. We are making sure that everything is communicated in both English and Spanish, because we have about 40% of our population is Spanish speaking. So we need to be doing a lot more in that area. We've created some new partnerships out in the local area with our Mazda dealership. Shields and Lowe's have all been great partners to us so far this year. And we're rolling out the red carpet, if you will. We really want to communicate great customer service, and that we are here to serve and partner with our families, whatever their needs may be. And we're planning a parent academy, which is coming up soon, which we actually have a parent group that's going to present out to other families during that time, and just to kind of bring all the families together to share in what some of those needs are across the board. And so along the way, we had to make some adjustments in our process. Every plan that, you can have it all pretty on paper, but when you get down into the work of it, you see that there's other needs that arise. And so we've had to make some changes along the way. We've done a lot more with addressing behavior this year than we had initially planned to. So we've held more assemblies and presentations with students. We've spent a lot of time analyzing our current data. It's something that the teachers at Martin City were not necessarily accustomed to doing regularly. So we've really had to take some building blocks and create data talks and what that's going to look like in our building. And of course, we had to pay more attention to our parents and our partnering and what the needs are of our community. So COVID has left us and with a lot of different needs and a lot of different support that our families and our kids need. And it's the school's responsibility to meet those needs. And then maybe the most important thing that we're doing to help our students is we are creating universal expectations. So regardless what environment or area a student is in the building, they're going to know a set of expectations that they can follow. And that's going to be K through 8th grade. And Martin City has had them in the past, many, many years ago, and kind of went to the wayside. So we're recreating and redeveloping those around being responsible, respectful, and safe learners in the school. And that is it. That is my presentation tonight. So thank you for allowing me to serve at Martin City. It truly is a wonderful place to be. And I love going to work every day. And I love the work that we're doing. And I'm very proud of my building leadership team. It's a lot of work that we're asking teachers to do outside the scope of their school day and other things that they have to tend to. So it's very important work that we're doing. And I do it wasn't in there, but I do want to just touch a little bit on what Dr. King had shared about looking at the data. And it does need to be more personalized. In the past, it was numbers that we were looking at. And now it is, okay, these names, these 10 names, and teachers are naming them. So these are the skills that they're missing. So if they can learn this set of skills and pass these lessons, that's going to move them up to the next level. And so that's kind of the difference that data is showing us this year. We're just being more intentional with what we're doing for kids. Any questions I can answer for you? Questions, yes, I'm sorry.
So with your forming of the universal expectations for behavior,
Yes, ma'am.
are you involving some of your older students in helping to craft these?
Yes, we are. We actually are. So we have involved our STUCO, and our NJHS students in those conversations. And we also have our student ambassadors. That's another club we could include. So yes.
One more questions.
How do you move your plans for improvement beyond the BLT and into every classroom?
So that's a great question. I've spent a lot of time making sure that we had good representation for the BLT, and so that they can go out and talk to their colleagues and their counterparts. And I share I have a Friday memo that I send out to staff, And I update it every week with any change in our 30, 60, 90-day plans. I remind them of what our SIP goals are, remind them of what our instructional priorities are. And then, of course, during PLCs, it's a conversation. We're always talking about our school improvement. So, and answering questions and pushing teachers and modeling what we're saying. We're all teachers and coaches in my building. So everybody is out helping teachers.
What's your biggest challenge in implementing your SIP?
The biggest challenge, let's see. I would say the biggest challenge is some teachers that don't necessarily see the vision. So the biggest challenge was creating our why. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we setting these goals? So, and I think a lot of times, you know, creating the why is the most important thing, because then you get people to buy in better. But so I would definitely say the why.
You feel like you've overcome that? those challenges?
Yes, I do.
Other questions? So I have one. So SEL is like my heart. That's the piece I always,
Yes, ma'am.
look at. I was actually reading an article today, and there was something that spoke to me, and it speaks exactly to your number 2 goal. And I'll read just a little bit of it. It was a teacher who, when they were student teaching, said they learned to always love the kid no one likes extra hard. And I won't read all of it, but the last piece was, students will generally rise to your expectations, whatever they are. So always look for my outliers, the ones who need someone to see them, fight for them, and believe in them, especially when no one else will.
Mhm,
So I feel like that goes right to your number 2, right there. So we talked, Helen asked about, how you're involving students. And I heard, NJHS and StuCo and Ambassador. How are you kind of working to bring those kids up that really need that extra love?
So really through our classroom meetings, our counseling lessons that are more intentionally created to support where kids are. We do like a lot of social groups and things like that during lunchtime, and working a lot with parents. We have Cornerstones of Care that is in our building that is meeting with students continuously and consistently now. So, but I feel like we have the tools that we need. When a student is struggling, we have the things in place that we need so that they can get the support and that families can get the guidance that they need. So I always say students are one carrying it all the way from being a success story. I mean, and I truly believe that. But we have the right things in place now to help our kids.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'll tell one little story on Dr. Harris. So when we were doing our debrief at Martin City with Dr. Parrott and Dr. Fudge, Dr. Parrott asked, 60% on reading level, and you've got, 26% right now on reading level. That's a big, goal. And she said, yes. And he said, how are you going to manage this? And she about came out of her seat and she said, I'm determined. And when we debriefed later at that point of talking about that, their comment back was, by gosh, she's gonna do it. Because of her, just that it's like this, there's no way that they're not gonna do it. Like, she wasn't even entertaining the fact that there's no way we're not going to. What are you talking about? And the fact that it was just the way that she, and his story about you coming out of your seat was, he acted like he did. It's like, it takes that kind of gumption and that kind of saying is, no, we won't fail. We're not going to fail. We have everything in place that we're going to need, and we're going to keep pushing. And if we don't get there, we're going to get there the next time. We're going to get there the next time. And that's what's needed in school improvement. You know, I was going to tell.
No, I didn't. That's funny.
Was the 60% on reading and math or just?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And I know today really, because I'd stand up here for hours and talk to you if you would let me, but it's just because of the limit on time. But yes, math, we're doing the same things. We're breaking down the data in the same way. We're breaking down the skills in the same way. We're grouping students I have 2 grade levels that are kind of partnering together to divide students and really hone in on some skills. So we're trying some different approaches to see some different results. Okay,
Thank you so much.
thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Dr.
Thank
Mary.
you, my pleasure.
And next up, Dr. Sean Smith.
So I can tell back to follow. I don't know why I always have to go second, but
You need to
See
talk
what
to your
happens.
boss about that for next year.
well, I talked about it last year, remember? And some things didn't change this year
Clearly, it's
either.
not working for you.
Nope, it's not. I'm starting to believe she has favorites. So good evening, board. I'm super happy to be here again and presenting to you for my 3rd year as principal at Grandview Middle School. One of my primary goals when I became principal 3 years ago was really to change the narrative of what Grandview Middle School stood for and just the community that we bring for our students and our parents. And I think we are definitely on the path to changing that narrative and doing some great things in the school. So I'm going to present our school improvement plan. We have 3 problems of practice that we really dove into. And then back in August, before the school year started, me and my BOT team had a day-long retreat where I brought my BOT team in and we looked at data over the last 3 years and really try to dive in and figure out what is it that's holding us back from being that high-level achieving school. And we went through the fishbone diagram, did some team building activities and things like that as well. And this is kind of where we started the school year at. The good thing about the problem of practice and the way we do school improvement now is that it's a constant revision. It's a constant reviewing of the data and seeing, are we on track? What do we need to make changes in movement? So our first problem of practice that we came up with was our students lacking academic vocabulary and the opportunity to receive value-added feedback when they do right in classes. And that kind of goes toward our literacy goal for our school. What we found out was that our kids, when they are reading, are really just word calling. They really don't understand the meaning behind the words they're reading on the page and how to put those words together to tell a story. So that was the one thing, that was the first thing that we kind of came up with. Our second one was that our kids lack the fluency and the inability to perform mental math, which was feeding into their low conceptual understanding of math. That comes from a whole host of things, not understanding simple number sense things like multiplication facts and things like that there. And so how do we fill in those gaps in that process? And then our last problem practice goes to our climate and culture of our school, is that we didn't have a tool for all of our stakeholders to regularly interact with the school and be a part of that decision-making process within our school. So how do we go about making sure that every stakeholder, so our students, our parents, our community partners, all are part of that process and feel like they're part of the team at Grandview Middle School. So how we came to this conclusion, we looked at our already data and we looked at kind of what was the most relevant data. So we went back to the winter of 2019, which would have been the last already assessment we took prior to the pandemic. We looked at our spring data from last year, knowing everything we did with virtual learning, and then we looked at our fall data. We found that on average, we had about 33% of our students who scored tier 1, and tier 1 means they're actually on grade level. 21% was tier 2, and then 45% of our kids were tier 3, which means they were 2 or more grade levels behind in reading. And then we dug in even deeper into that, and we found that we had a big deficit in vocabulary, which went to the academic vocabulary development that we need to do, and then reading comprehension in both literature and informational text. And then on the math side, we looked at our data once again those same 3 years, and we found that only 19% of our kids were on grade level, 36% 1 grade level behind, and 45% of our students were 2 or more grade levels behind in math. And once again, diving deeper, we found that it was a big thing with number sense and algebraic thinking, which led to our problems of practice that I talked about in the previous slide. And then last year and the previous year, I did a parent, student, and staff survey. So our survey data told us that while 90% of our stakeholders believe that we have a clear vision at the school, only 40% feel like they were actually involved in that decision-making process to create that vision. And that was a problem for us because, like I said, we wanted to make sure we were all a part of this process. And it's not just, the big thing is, the big thing that we wanted to make sure that we weren't doing school to students, but we were doing school with students. And that was a big thing that stood out to us, that they didn't feel like they had any decision-making process power within our building. So we came up with 3 change ideas. The first one was we wanted to set a foundation for the development of academic and content-specific vocabulary. One of the issues we found that in content areas, the way that they were using words in 6th grade was different in 7th grade, different in 8th grade. So when a kid went from 6th to 7th to 8th grade and they saw a word, they thought it was a brand new word, not understanding it was the exact same word from the previous years, but it was teachers just using different definitions in different contexts when they were using it. So we wanted to really make sure that we had a consistent vocabulary going throughout grades, especially across the same content areas. The second one was we wanted to talk about how do we address the lack of fluency and increase conceptual understanding in math. One of the things that we have found with our illustrative math curriculum, which I think does some great things with discovery-based learning in math, it doesn't do a great job addressing deficits that kids come into the classroom with. So we wanted to go about how do we create a model to really address some of those deficits that our kids have, and then how do we create what we call micro interventions in the lessons to fill those gaps in the moment and not just continue to let them build and build and build. And then the last goal was to create a plan specific to each stakeholder group to make sure that they had a two-way communication and provide an avenue for them to be a part of the decision-making process in our school. And that's the big thing, is that two-way communication, not us always disseminating information, but for ways to take in information as a system or a school, and then do something with that to make the experience better for our kids and for our parents. So our 30, 60, 90-day plan, the first one is around our language arts goals. So what we did was we created an academic vocabulary list in basically tier 1 and tier 2 words. The first one was around the proficiency scales, and it was around words like explain, evaluate, analyze. We were throwing those words out to kids, but kids really didn't know what that meant. When I asked them to analyze something, they really didn't know what it meant to analyze something or to evaluate something. So we wanted to have a clear definition so that if I was to stop a kid in the cafeteria and say, hey, if I was to actually analyze something, what would you do? And that answer would be consistent across the board. So we created those words, and that also then turned into what our learning target language. So in our classroom, every teacher has a learning target for the day, and those words are embedded into those learning targets. So what are we asking kids to do with the information we're giving them for that day? And then from there, we created content-specific vocabulary. So in social studies, what are the words that we're using across all 3 grade levels of social studies? In math, what are the words we're using? And are we using them consistently each grade level so that kids aren't thinking that they're learning something new, but it's the exact same concept from grade to grade to grade, and making that connectivity across each one. Some of the outcomes that we got from that. So we do, Dr. Harris talked about the work that we've done with Learning Science International, and they've given us a tool called a rigor walk tool. So it allows us to go into the classroom and really look at, is the target that is on the board really what's happening in the classroom? So we were looking at target task alignment. So if I'm asking a kid to analyze, the work in front of them, they're actually analyzing, they aren't just identifying. Or if we're asking them to evaluate, they're actually evaluating something, not just doing a random selection type of activity. So our rigor walk data has shown that those target task alignment things have started to align better. So kids are actually doing more rigorous tasks in the classroom when teachers are having them do individual work. We created the vocabulary list for content specific, and I'll talk about my adjustments on that there. But we do have a word bank for each content area now that is consistent across all 3 grade levels from 6th to 7th to 8th grade, so that we're making sure kids are using the same words in the same context, the same definition, no matter what grade they're in. One of the things that we check for that is we do Friday lunchtime quizzes. So on Friday, I'm in the cafeteria and the teachers, so each week we focus on the content area, and the teachers submit a set of words, and I quiz the kids during lunch on those words, and we have a big old candy box with cookies and chips and all that stuff like that. So I was out for a couple of Fridays. So kids, when I got back, like, Dr. we didn't do quiz Friday, where were you at? So, but it's once again, gets kids excited about the learning process, even when they're not sitting inside classrooms. Goal 2 was around our math goal. The one thing that we want to talk about with this was what PD do our teachers need in order to help them in the classroom be able to do those micro lessons and interventions. So we use some of the work with Learning Science International to address those issues. The big problem that we found through walkthrough data as well was that there was way too much teacher talk. There was a lot of lecturing going on. Students weren't given time to actually transfer the knowledge and use the knowledge the teachers were giving them. So we're using what we call academic teaming, which is the work we did with Learning Science International, to increase our student discourse in the classroom. So we can actually hear students talking about the math. And then if I can hear you talking about it and I hear those misconceptions, I can then address them instead of waiting to the end of the class when I get an exit slip, or the end of the week when I get a quiz. I can address it in the moment when I'm listening to kids talk about a concept I just went over with them. So we provide that. And then we're currently in the process of creating some models to help teachers when they are teaching a concept to have a success criteria, to know that, because let me kind of just give you a quick overview of IM. IM uses 40 activities within a lesson. And in order to address some of the misconceptions or those gaps we can't do all 4 activities. So how do we create a success criteria? So say, if I have 85 to 90% of my kids on activity 1 get it right, maybe we can skip activity 2 and go to activity 3, which then gives me more time at the end of the class to do some of those micro intervention time things. So really trying to buy back time in the classroom and using data to make decisions in the moment about instruction. Instead of thinking we have to teach every single thing when some kids already have it, or the majority of our kids already have it. And then the last goal is around our school culture. The big thing we did, well, I'll get to the student. So we, if you know anything about GMS, you know, we have a parent Facebook group, which is our amazing communication with parents. We wanted to really make sure that that was an avenue that we want to continue to use. And data continuously shows that it is an amazing tool for parents to talk to, not anybody in the school, but actually Dr. Smith. So I'm the one that manages the Facebook group, but anytime we have an issue, a concern, parents can go post it on there and it's going to be addressed, usually within 24 hours. But the thing I love most about it now is that there's a situation. Once it's posted, usually before I can even get to it, another parent has already stepped in and helped them respond and help that. So that kind of once again builds that community that it's not just Dr. Smith's community, but it's all of our community. So a lot of the parents are starting to help deal with some of the issues or concerns, things like that there. The other thing was that like I said, our students felt like they didn't have any voice in the school. So we have revamped our student council to be more of a student body voice representation. So we have 6 teams, 2 teams per grade level, and there are 4 representatives for each team. And they meet with me once a month. And the day before they meet with me, they meet with their team in a town hall meeting. And they talk to the other students about, hey, what are some issues, concerns that you have? We're meeting with Dr. Smith tomorrow. What can we take back to him? And then the one thing I challenge them to is when they bring a situation to me, they have to bring 2 solutions to helping them be solution oriented in the process as well. So some of the things that we have adapted and changed because of that is our intervention class. There was a schedule that we set out at the beginning of the year, teachers, and kids told me, well, teachers aren't following it. So we had to go back and revamp the schedule. The other thing that kids said they wanted more time to be able to have like a study hall during the class, the school day. So we were able to take some of that intervention time to carve it out and give them some study hall or time they can go work one-on-one with a teacher, make up a test, do things like that there. The other thing was our bell schedule. They had a problem with it because in the morning, our 7th graders have encore. So they were running into an issue of going to the locker and getting to encore class on time. So they were like, well, can we just add 2 more minutes to allow kids to come in? So instead of coming in at 8:05, can we come in at 8:03? Once again, it doesn't cost us anything, but once again, it shows that they were able to get a voice and make a decision in the school. And now 7th graders can get to class on time. So that's been a huge, huge component, is that student council piece and helping students have a voice and making sure school is an enjoyable experience for them. So some of the adjustments we've made along the way, when we came up with the vocabulary list, and I just thought it would have been self-evident that we wanted to make sure that they were the same across all grade levels, and they weren't. So teachers were kind of frustrated. They had to go back and match the definitions. But I'm like, if I have a word, for example, in math, constant proportionality, it should be the same in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So we had to go back after they created the list of words and make sure they had definitions that matched across all 3 grade levels and really have conversations for them so they truly understood what they were teaching. So it really kind of helped for them to dive deeper as teachers to understand what they're teaching and how it connect throughout the grade levels. With goal 2, I said the big thing we're working on and adjusting now is coming up with those models for planning so that teachers know when do they need to step away and do a micro intervention, or when can they accelerate the learning in the process and not feel like they have to teach every single activity the way it's written based on the data they see in the moment and not just waiting to the end. And then the last goal is our current mission and vision statement that is in our handbook doesn't align with our school priorities. We have 3 school priorities: relationships, intentional planning, delivery, instruction, advancing literacy and numeracy. And the vision and mission statement has not been revised at GMS in a number of years. So we're now in a revision process with the BLT team of creating a draft that we will then take back to our PTSA and our student council to get those voices. And then with the hopes of having something by 3rd quarter, a new vision and mission statement that really aligns with the priorities of what we're doing at the school. So, any questions? I know it's a lot to take in.
Information.
So I heard you talk a lot about the micro interventions. I'm just kind of curious as to how that happens, when it happens, and what expected results or when you expect it.
So the micro interventions we want to happen like real time in the classroom. And it's specifically to the math classroom and trying to fill in some of those deficits and gaps. So for example, one of the things we know in 7th grade, they teach, one of the main focuses is around real number operations. So, and then when they get to 8th grade, it's a big area of deficit by the time they get to 8th grade, they haven't really had mastered back there. So what we want to do is when you're teaching that in the moment, so if we're teaching how to solve an equation and we see that kids are struggling with multiplying rational numbers. How can we step into a 5-minute quick lesson on intervention lesson on multiplying negative numbers? So we want it to be real time. But once again, that doesn't happen unless the planning process, you thought about that and already have that micro intervention already built in and ready to go. So that's the process of what we're working on right now, is building those kind of a database of micro interventions so that our teacher know, hey, I'm going to be teaching this skill. Here's a foundational skill the kids need to have, but if they don't have it, here's a 5-minute lesson I can step away and do real quick and then come back to my main lesson.
They have to prepare for them ahead of time.
Right, and that goes to our second priority of intentional planning and labor instruction.
And what system would that be in? What system would that data, that micro lesson be maintained in?
Usually through Google. We keep a lot of our stuff in Google, is where a lot of our lessons and hows and things like that. And then the actual delivery to students is through Canvas.
I just wondering if it, when the opportunity comes, it may be different for, different students, different topics. Just trying to see how it would be ready, available for that teacher to bring up and actually utilize it.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back just like with our vocabulary word bank that we're creating. I mean, it's an ongoing process, but we do have one location where it's housed. So that once again, a teacher can quickly go and reference and know that. But once again, in the planning process, you have to know what is that foundational skill that a kid's going to miss. But I don't want it to be, oh, this kid's missing a skill. Give me 5 minutes to go find it. Like, I want you to already have it planned and ready to go in your back pocket if it do come up. So.
Is there a goal to share the vocabulary list with the high school so that when these kids move on?
We will share with whoever wants to share it. We are open to that. But yeah, we definitely, I mean, it's out there. It's not like we're trying to keep it a secret. So.
That's one of the questions I had, you answered in your PowerPoint was, how did you get the teachers to agree? Because after teaching for 30 years, I have a lot of disagreement about different terms, but you answered that question. But I did want to say, I really like the way you talk about listening to the kids and how the student council comes with a situation and the solution. So I was impressed with that. And on your Facebook page, do you have very many kids that, I mean, I follow it, but do you have very many kids that jump in on the Facebook?
We don't allow kids. It's for parents only.
Okay.
Yeah, so we don't allow students to be on the Facebook page.
Was there a group versus a page?
It's a group.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
I don't think
private
what
group.
you're following is what he's talking about.
I just didn't say that.
So then our last community piece, I do want to make sure I promote this here. This Saturday, this is my 3rd year doing this at our school. We do a Thanksgiving basket giveaway. My first year, we gave away, I think, 40 baskets, complete with the turkey and all the fixings. Last year, we did 70, and this year, we're doing 100 on Saturday. So we're super excited to bring that back and being able to provide, once again, another resource to our families in our community.
I have a question for you. So on goal 3, partnering with stakeholders, which my question then rolls into goals 2 and 1. How are the teachers, including parents, with helping with student success?
So one of the things that we're trying to, I think get back better at doing is, we did it, I think a really good job my first year. Last year it kind of fell off, and some teams have kept it this year. Every week they send home a parent newsletter by team, and usually that outlines kind of what are the skills that are being taught that week, what are the resources parents can use. For example, IM has a parent resource that parents can use at home to help their kids, things like that there. So we have kind of gotten away from that, and I think that's something we definitely need to get back to. Our 6th grade does a great job with it. I know Team 3 does a great job with it. Our 8th grade teams have kind of fell off a little bit with doing that there, but I think that was a great resource we've done in the past, is that weekly newsletter coming out from the teams, going out to parents, with kind of giving them a highlight of what's going on that week.
What are your expectations for your staff around communication with parents?
The expectation is one, the parent newsletter, I think, is the primary communication piece for students that are struggling. It is an expectation that there's bi-weekly conversations, whether it be via email or phone call, is what's supposed to be happening, especially for our struggling students, to talk about support plans and things like that there. And then usually, if that's not the case, or parents aren't having those communications, their first line of defense, of course, is the assistant principal tied that. But I mean, as a parent, I'm always available to talk to any parent at any time, and then to step in and kind of help fix that communication issue there as well.
It just all ties really nicely together.
I know you get support from the admin, but how can the board best support you in your school?
Wow, that is a good question.
You're welcome.
That is a good question. I don't know, raise. I would have to get back to you on that one. Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing I said, I mean, I am I'm fortunate to, go a lot of places and talk to a lot of different groups and across the country. And the one thing I will say is that the support from our central office is second to none. I can call Dr. King at any moment and, get a response or get support, or I can call Dr. Rodriguez with a situation. And I've taught in districts in Nebraska, Ohio, Kansas, and it is not like that everywhere. So that is one thing I think that we do, go above and beyond is with the support from our central office personnel. Now, Dr. Foss, on the other
Except for him. I only said that because you're behind him. You can't see any reactions.
It's just testing to see if you're back.
Make sure he's paying attention.
Any other questions? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it.
And I don't have favorites. Last but not least, I would have Ms. Arthur here, and she is the interim principal from CARE. She's going to present CARE's school improvement plan.
Yes. So I want to start out giving you a little bit of background information. As she mentioned, my name is Maggie Arthur, and I like to tell people that I am a homegrown leader in Grandview. And I say that because I am a 1992 graduate from Grandview. I attended Grandview kindergarten through 12th grade, didn't go anywhere. I am currently in my 20th year as a Grandview School District employee. I started out as a paraprofessional, got my teaching certification, moved into that role in the classroom, and am currently serving as the interim principal at CARE. Along my path, I took advantage of many leadership opportunities, and most recently being this past summer, where I spent June and July as the assistant principal for our summer school program. I was super excited to get a phone call on August the 9th, naming me as the interim principal at CARE. Started on August the 10th, just a week before teachers came back, hit the ground running, and I don't think I've stopped since. It's just a constant learning cycle. And so I'm really excited to be in the role I'm in and here to present to you tonight. So CARE houses 5 different programs in the district. We have a transitions kindergarten through 5th grade program, a transitions 6th through 12th grade program, our focus program, Missouri Options, and Crossroads. So looking at those 5 programs, trying to find and identify our problems of practice, we found that student engagement and the needs, their social emotional needs being met, and just self-regulation skills were lacking. And so that was a focus that we knew we needed to address in school improvement plan. Part of that being missing life skills that our students often come to us with. So we utilize the BIS process to help maneuver through those life skills. Our students are also generally 2 or more years behind in reading or math. And they have a lot of trust issues, specifically with adults. And so building those relationships early on is a primary goal of ours to help assist get engagement and academic growth. Second, we need some additional supports in our building. We do not currently have a reading specialist or interventionist, but we have a high percentage of students that are significantly below reading level. We do not have a behavioral interventionist, and most of our students come to us with severe traumas and extreme behaviors. And so having that added support, not only for the students, but the staff, we felt is important for us. And our counselors were being utilized as PE teachers. And so that was a real problem for us in addressing the needs of our students socially and emotionally. And then finally, we needed some supports for our staff. In surveys and conversations, a lot of times it was PD we're receiving is not necessarily meaningful for my particular role. It's difficult for 5 different programs to participate in the same type of PD and get what they need out of it. And there was not a lot of team building or bonding. Again, 5 different programs, trying to learn about each other's programs and get to know each other was an issue. So that was one thing that we really wanted to work on. We also, sorry, one more thing. We have an instructional coach that we get 1 day a week. That makes it difficult. There's not a lot of time for her to meet with each teacher each day for a length of time that could be truly beneficial. So sometimes we have to break it down and we get to meet with these teachers this time, these teachers this time, these teachers this time. And so then there's gaps in between meeting and response to that meeting and feedback for what's happening in the classroom. So that was another issue that we had. A little bit of background, again, our students generally come to us 2 or more years behind in reading and math, or in regards to our focus program, 2 or more years ahead. And so depending on the program, we have a huge range of where our students could be at. We also, mentioning 5 programs, lacked the ability to do collaborative planning. Common assessments are difficult when you have 5 programs, especially ranging from kindergarten through 12th grade. And data meetings can be difficult, trying to make sure we're looking at the right data for the right program, and then how to use that to drive our instruction. And then finally, finding a way to help students develop their self-regulation skills while we are trying to progress them academically can be difficult. And so our challenge is, how do we get in there and develop those relationships early on to build trust and to build acceptance and the need or want for them to participate in their own education. Okay. So a little bit of data. Our first goal is that we would increase academic performance utilizing effective teaching practices. And the reason that we chose this was looking at our most recent iReady data. Again, deficits, huge deficits in reading and math both. And so how we plan to address those were to provide support through professional development for our staff. We also wanted to improve our tier 3 instruction, trying to find a way to implement reading strategies across curriculum and not focusing just on those in a reading class, but how can we push those into every subject area. We wanted to protect and strengthen our PLCs and our BLT time. Meetings have not always been consistent in our building. And I say that knowing, because I was a teacher in our building, not always protected, not always enough time to do that. So we wanted to try to improve that. And we wanted our teachers to be sure, to give them the opportunity to participate in data meetings and use that data to drive their instruction versus, we had this meeting, here's what happened in my classroom, and doing nothing with it. Our second goal is increasing student engagement and strengthen their self-regulation skills. The reason we chose this is looking at our previous year's behavioral data. There are some areas of concern, the number of recovery room visits versus the number of students that are having those visits can be concerning if you look over multiple years. And so the way we wanted to address this is focus on building those positive relationships early on. We wanted to really utilize the BIS model that the district provides for us. So we meet with our BIS consultant monthly. We have some very specific goals that we work on with him, especially around our student behavior. And that is how to create an individual success plan that really focuses on their missing skills and helps them grow there so that they can grow academically. We collect and analyze this data weekly. We look at behaviors daily. Each program has its own data sheet that students track their behavior on each day. And so we look at it daily. I mean, it's tracked daily, but we look at it weekly and kind of see where we're at and are we making gains. We want to promote and support behavioral and trauma PD. We get it at the district level. We're looking at ways that we can push that into a building level as well. And we just want to connect with every student and every family. That's how we want to improve these areas. So our 30, 60, 90-day goal, we wanted to make sure that we included a collaborative planning time in our master schedule, and we did that. We have meetings scheduled 4 nights a week, right after our kids dismiss. Each night has a very specific agenda, whether it's Fed related, meetings with OZNAM, which is where a large part of our population comes from, data meetings, and then BLT meetings, and classroom time for teachers to collaborate. We also wanted our staff to align their SLOs and their growth plans to help them better commit to personal growth in the classroom. And we did that by working through the development and completion of those growth plans and SLOs. We also wanted to use our assessment data to develop individual and small group interventions. And one of the results from that was a non-negotiable vocabulary assessment that was developed by our 6th through 12th grade teachers. Again, that related back to the deficit we saw in iReady, specifically in vocabulary. And then we've just tried to, as a BLT team, plan PD that focuses on those different areas. We've just recently did the Compass activity. I don't know if you guys have ever done it, but it kind of helps you identify where you're at, what kind of a person you are. Are you a true north? Are you, blunt, straightforward? Are you kind of laid back, easygoing? And our hope was that learning that about ourselves helped us work better together, but then also looking at that and realizing that our students fall in these different categories too, and how can we better service them, knowing where they're at. So, and then of course, I'm doing my observations and walkthroughs, watching for this changes in the classroom, hoping to see. For goal 2, we are committed to building relationships with students, families, and guardians. And we felt very strongly about adding the word guardians there because much of our population is OZNAM, or they're in foster homes or group homes. And so parents aren't necessarily their contact person. And so making sure that we build those connections with them, sometimes it's their caseworker that we have to build that relationship with. So that is a priority for us. Connecting with the students, we do that by intentionally connecting with them individually every morning through advisory. We also monitor the contact log. As the expectation that my staff contact parents or guardians once a week, either via email or phone call. I've asked them to do a phone call at least every 2 weeks. Some parents have asked that we not call, we just send emails. And so we make that adjustment there. But the expectation is that they're reaching out, good or bad, for every one of our students every week. We are engaging in the best practices. We're trying to make sure that we're using common language across the board. That's when we process with a student who's coming out of recovery or process with a student who's just struggling in class. We want them to hear that same language from each teacher so they know the expectation and they know what they need to be doing to grow. BIS PD. We met with our consultant today. It's ironic that I'm presenting tonight because he was here today. And we talked specifically about some specific items that we need to do some PD with our staff on to help meet that goal of consistency. And then we are committed to building relationships with our colleagues and across programs. There's been a lot of divide over the years, focus teachers not knowing what's happening in Missouri Options, CK5 not knowing what's happening downstairs with the 612. And so we really want to focus on kind of growing that community versus being 5 separate silos within the building. And we're trying to do that through PD. Okay. So along the way, being completely transparent, being new to this role and new to the change science training that's been happening for 3 years now, we started with last year's building admins SIP plan. And we took that plan and tried to make some modifications early on, just to include all of our programs. We found there were pieces that covered some programs, but not all programs. So we were trying to be all inclusive. We made changes for kids being back in person instead of virtual. There were things in it that were virtual versus in person. And also to address the current student population we have. We have a highly transient population. students that were with us last year, maybe 15 returned this year. So every year, every quarter, every semester, we have a new rollover. We have 4 new ones starting next week. And so making that change to fit our current student population was important to us. We've made some changes to our program along the way. I changed our para report time to mirror that of our teacher report time. And that gives them about 20 minutes every morning to meet as teams, either teacher and para, or the 5 teachers for this program, to kind of look at what their day is going to look like. What do they need to get into place to support the students for that day? And then we also made a change to the master schedule. If you remember, I mentioned earlier that our counselors were teaching PE. We have adjusted the schedule now that their afternoon is open for student appointments to push into the different programs to really work with our students. And that's been in effect for about 2 weeks. So we don't have a lot of data to show a significant change in behaviors with that, but we're hoping that we will see that. For staff and student supports, we've added a few of our own. Some of our classes are a little smaller right now. We have a large number of students that are on suspension. And so we have utilized or taken advantage of the opportunity to combine some of those smaller classes, which then frees up time for our teachers to go do classroom observations in other classrooms, to meet with myself, to meet with their para as a team, to observe in another program, just to learn about the program. And so we're trying to think outside of the box on ways to grow our teachers to help grow our students. Additionally, we've tried a few things as an alternative to suspension or crossroads placement. We took a 8th grade student who had a day of ISS, and we, with parent permission, planted him upstairs in our elementary program. And so the hope was not only would he get his work done, but he's not sitting in a classroom staring at a computer all day. He's now got the job to mentor. And so for him to kind of see what happens upstairs, how that could lead to where he's at now, and just giving that opportunity for some growth in our students in knowing what the different programs are. And then we did something very similar with an elementary student who actually is too young to go to Crossroads. So rather than suspend, we put him in a buddy room downstairs in our older program. Again, he had work to complete. It wasn't just a free-for-all. And it was really exciting to see the students, the older students that rolled through that class that he was in, who took the initiative to work with him and pair with him. And so it was fun to watch. We're excited about it. We think it's hopefully going to give some of our students purpose. And that they're not just here for themselves, but they can be here for somebody else, emotionally and educationally. That all being said, we have a lot of things to reevaluate. Again, I haven't been through the training for the last 3 years. The training that I got a couple of weeks ago, the article that I had to read, and I guess it was just last week, made me realize that we need to reevaluate our BLT team. I inherited the BLT team. I didn't make any changes. So I need to look at that and who's on it and who needs to be on it. And the reason I say that is because we also need to look at our SIP focus. It's hard to write a building plan for 5 programs that need 5 very different things. And so in conversations with Dr. Budge and Parrott and Dr. King, I asked the question, do we have to write a plan for all 5 programs? Because in reality, the TK5 and T612 are the only 2 programs that we are their home school. We have a say in the educational work that they're getting. Crossroads, it gets sent by other schools. We're just there to help and guide. Missouri Options, they're there to practice and work on high set and graduate. Focus is the gifted program, very different standards. And so just that little bit of PD got me thinking, do we need to make that change so that we can be more specific about the students that we really have the power to serve? And so we have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. That being said, any questions?
What questions do we have?
really walked yourself into an overwhelming situation.
I did, I did, but I'm grateful for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So especially your SIP goal 1,
Mhm.
it feels kind of overwhelming, kind of like your whole situation, a little bit overwhelming.
Yes.
So how do your teachers feel about this? Are they excited and ready to get going and start making these changes that are needed? Or are they so overwhelmed by the list that they're just like, oh my gosh, no?
So what they are overwhelmed by is what's there.
Mhm.
This is a new thought process, and I haven't even got to meet with my BLT team yet to discuss these changes. So the staff doesn't yet know that it's coming. I think there will be some relief. And I think that some of the stress they're feeling now will dissipate and help with buy-in. Because if I just went now and said, we're making these changes, da, 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 it would be, oh, there's one more thing on my plate. How am I going to adjust? How am I going to figure it out? So I'm starting with my BLT team, which we have not got to meet yet.
You have members from all 5 programs on the BLT team?
Sort of. I have TK5. I have a counselor from the transition side. I have the Missouri options teacher. And then I have a para, so not necessarily a different team, but a different role. And then I have a classroom teacher and 2 focus teachers. The reason there are 2 focus teachers is one of them's new. And so before Ms. Thurman left, she had asked him to join the team just to kind of learn about the building and the program. And so there are 2 of them because he's still learning focus. So to kind of speak for focus, we needed Dr. Adams, and Mr. Brands has now joined. But should we revamp and narrow our focus, the BLT team will need to be modified as well.
Other questions? We have?
I just like your comment about narrowing the focus.
I'm sorry.
I liked your comment about narrowing the focus.
Oh, yes.
Focus.
Yeah, narrowing the focus. Yeah.
And so I made the comment earlier about the students that are hard to love, and I know you have a building full of them.
Yes.
You know, sometimes, and so no question for me, but I love the thoughts around the alternatives to the suspensions and crossroads. I think that's amazing, and I would love to see more of that. It's a great job.
Thank you.
I've got more questions, but I think I probably just need to make a visit just to learn more.
To learn more about
their
it.
program.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. You're welcome anytime.
Definitely would encourage that.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
You
in that
really
building.
can't understand it till you walk through that building and seen all the
Yeah.
programs and talked through it, so.
Yeah. And it'll be fun. You're not sure, you don't know what you'll see. They came through the other day and got his stats, so I mean, it's a interesting building to come to. And I apologize that I didn't bring you all coasters. I didn't get that memo.
Next time, next time. Now you understand.
Thank you.
Dr. Smith didn't either, so.
I mean, he had a pool party at his school. He couldn't even bring us coasters or
Wow.
something. I mean, come on.
You were invited to the pool party.
I think after the fact. I saw it on Facebook.
Thank
On the
you.
parent group page.
Thank you, Ms. Alford.
And that concludes our
That concludes.
improvement plans for this evening.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Appreciate all of you. While they're leaving, we're gonna take a really quick break. Okay, is that okay?
Sure, we've only got one more item on the agenda, just so you know.
Then we'll power through, I hope.
Yeah, one more action item.
Okay,
We can do whatever you need to do. It's your meeting.
we'll power through. We've been waiting this long.
We can pause.
We're good, all right, so workforce excellence, we don't have anything for that, right?
Nope, we have no items submitted there. We've already
We
gone
skipped
through
the
resource
bonds.
stewardship, and we have no
Family
items submitted
community,
for
nothing.
family and community.
Oh, fantastic, yes, let's go, all right.
We, under governance, we have a couple items for you, just to review for policies on first read. So happy to answer any questions about those. And we do have one One little item that we did notice that will need to be amended.
Yeah, may I just take a moment on it for the benefit of our new board members, that, and maybe I said this last time when we did these, but Missouri School Board, we contract with Missouri School Boards Association to do maintenance on our policies. So usually that's what you see, but we also do our own internal recommendations for revisions, which are what these 4 are. I'm just gonna start with the last 2. I think these are self-explanatory, but just to touch base on those. Those have to do with short-term leaves for the classified as well as the certificated staff. And just to make sure that our PDOs, the way it now reads is they can't be connected to a holiday or like spring break or first and last week of school, things like that were. And we saw one where there was one of those left out. That's all that's about. The professional staff compensations, GCBA, that comes from a Grandview 10 recommendation having to do with experience steps when you're for new hires. And the DJDBA, this was a recommendation, actually, not a recommendation, it was it's something brought forward to us from MSBA as they were reviewing our policies in general, not specific policies, but they're getting ready to move the process, do it differently than they do now. So our editor pointed this out to me that this policy is really custom policy for our district. I really don't know the history of it. It doesn't mean that this same concept isn't used by other districts. It's just maybe in a different policy, or could be not in a policy at all, but a process that you are protocol or administrative procedure or some sort of, somewhere dictating what they do. But this specific policy is custom to us, and maybe that's what brought it forward. So basically saying that this 15,000 limit was based upon purchases for construction for way back when. The statute has been changed. This policy never got updated, probably never got updated because, again, we're custom, and MSBA maybe never saw that before, never realized it needed to be, I suppose. So we went ahead, they told us this, what, Kenny, 6 months ago or something like that. We finally sort of, we're kind of, other things took precedent. This kind of came up, and so changed it, but I did notice that the 15K did not get changed in the first paragraph. This is another reason we do things on first reading and then second reading. You can still approve it on as it is on first reading. We'll make this change to the first paragraph and change that to 50K for second reading. I hope that helps explain. Hope that helps whoever had a later time for when this meeting is. Not me, I'm not.
Happy to answer any questions about any of those. Again, they're first readings, so there's certainly opportunities to change, but they're there for first reading.
Just to clarify for our newer members, on the policy GCBA with the Grandview 10 recommendation, can you kind of clarify the verbiage that was added in bullet 9 and what that truly means?
Sure.
I think I remember from Grandview 10 from last year, but they were not on the board, so.
Yeah, so there was a variety of different things in terms of Grandview 10 every single year when they meet, things like that, and provide different recommendations. One of the recommendations that we have right now is that we allow a certain number of years for individuals coming into our district in terms of experience. So if you've been teaching for 20 years and you come into our experience, that doesn't, or in our district, that doesn't mean that we give you all 20 years. There's a cap on that number. And so it impacts our flexibility in terms of recruitment. And so one of the recommendations from Grandview 10 last year was to increase that number by 1 every year for the next several years. So right now it's setting at 10. This year it would go up, it went up to 11 and will go up to 12 next year. So we put some language in there just to capture that. So that way, again, it's a memorialized in that particular regard. It's not just an understanding of, oh yeah, I remember that. It's actually in our policy that shows that, since we had a policy associated with it. So anytime we have those updates, a lot of times we have a summary of agreements that kind of goes through those updates, but then some of these things deal directly with policies, and so we need to update our policies to make sure that they match.
Thank you. So then in 25-26, this will be modified again.
Well, and it's very possible that this year and next year, I mean, there may be a different strategy or a different suggestion, but we just wanted to make sure that we're always up to date with these particular pieces. Just
Any
need a
questions
recommendation.
about these 4 policies on first read? Okay, we need a motion.
I move that we approve revisions to policies DJDBA, GCBA, GCBDA, and GDBDA. This is a vision test. On first reading as presented. Did I get it right?
You did. But were you on Zoom when I did all these? Do you want me to do that like I always do? I'm gonna do it. Approve revisions to policies DJDBA, GCBA, GCBDA, and GDBDA. Properly moved in second. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, passes unanimous. Thank you.
All right, we'll move to recapitulation of funds. We'll do just a few things here as we've gone through. No, this is a summary, so happy to answer any questions. Dr. Powell, anything to highlight?
Really not, just revenues for the operating funds are up approximately 2.2 million compared to this time last year. At the same rates as our expenses, about 1.38 million from this time last year. We still got good cash balances, districts in good financial shape. Strongly encourage you to recommend this. You approve this.
This isn't approval, this is just for information.
Oh, just information. Let's move on.
Just telling us where we are.
I suggest you don't approve what he says.
Any questions about that? All right, we'll move on. Salient dates, sir.
You have the information. There's nothing really to highlight, except there is a workshop and our regular meetings. But we do have some filing dates coming up for anybody that may be sitting out there that might be interested in that. So that will open up in December, and we approved those vacancies to be opened in consent this evening.
Through December 20th.
Starts the 7th.
7th to the
It does.
11th. So, and I assume you will put out the times you'll be available that week of Christmas.
They're on the legal notice that you approved tonight.
Oh, I thought it said it would be, I read it. I thought it said it would be published later. Maybe I misunderstood. Okay.
You're asking when they'll be published?
The
That's your
time.
question?
No, the times that you are going to be there during Christmas break.
Yeah, they're on there.
It's on it. Okay, I just misread it. Okay. That it would be- Okay, so I wasn't crazy. Okay, she thought the same thing.
Maybe I'm not understanding your question.
So I thought it just said there will be time available during that Christmas break to be determined later or something to that effect.
If it says that, it shouldn't have said that. I don't think it does say that. but-
Yeah, I just misunderstood it. That's okay. Yeah, it says designated office hours will be established on December 20th to 28th. It doesn't say. Oh, it's actually
Look at
in
the
there.
table.
In the table. See? All right, we're moving on.
Maybe I need to
Moving
think
on.
about rephrasing that.
Sorry.
Attach it.
Moving on. Board member reports.
Doing a
I'm
good
telling
job.
you, my brain is on one thing right now. Okay. Yes, you do. No, you can go ahead. You have stuff. We went to convention.
We
You
went to the
have-
convention last weekend, 2 weekends ago. We went to Weekend of Love.
Yes.
And
And we won, even though they didn't have my help at the end.
One what?
Family feud.
Family Feud.
more
beat
family
Team
Team
feud.
Grandview.
We beat a bunch of other districts that were.
Right, they had an advantage. There's like 4 other districts are part of that other group, and
Part of the
Team
other team.
Grandview won.
Yeah.
Our
They may have said we
superintendent is
did
highly
not
competitive.
win. They may have said we tied, but we were counting the points and
It
we
was
for
not-
sure
it was
won.
not accurate.
They just didn't want them to feel badly.
Our
So,
officers represented.
yes.
It was
so,
good. and it's gonna be
President,
in
vice
Kansas City again
president,
next
treasurer.
year.
Yes.
Former former president with Leonard Green as well, so.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
represented.
Yep, so it was a good time. It was fun. And it was all about legal stuff, so, that made it even more fun. But yeah, no, really good learnings, I think. And, I think in board priorities, I think that's where it was listed. Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Amaya gave a presentation, and I went and heckled them, and so that was fun. Yes.
Always appreciated.
So, I sat right in the front row so I could, they could look right at me while they were talking. But no, it was really good. They did a really nice job with that, talking about our SEL and some of the things there. So, so that was good. The only other thing that I have is, I know we had some openings on some committees. And Mr. Green, I think you said that you would fill those, but I think that it would be really helpful if there is any availability for us to have some of the new members to join a couple of those, at least for now. There's a couple of committees, and I'm trying to find a list here, but there's a couple of committees that either don't meet or would meet very briefly at one time.
Guidance and audit.
Thank you, guidance and audit. And we also still need one more person to do our finance committee, which meets the Tuesday before each board meeting for maybe 15 minutes, half hour. I mean, it just depends on how much there is to look over and how many people there are. So if there's only 1 or 2 people there, it's gonna take longer. If there's 3 people there, it's gonna be shorter because we're passing all the work out. So that's at 5:30. 5:15, thank you. You can see I've only been to like one of them, but 5:15 on the Tuesday before board meeting. So if you guys could maybe think about that, just to take a little bit off of Damon's plate, because he is on several committees now at this point, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, anything you guys want to say? If you want to send out, I don't know if they were here when we sent that out, you guys have that list? Or do we need to resend it?
So I can, sorry, it's a suggestion that people may want to fill committees that are already filled.
So I think I filled the rest of the committees, right? So I mean, I think the audit committee was, I don't know how many meetings it was, I don't know when the meeting will be, but I mean, I'm open to, I don't know when they are, but it didn't seem like it was that much time associated with, the biggest one was Grandview 10. And if so, if there's any takers.
Do the audit forms.
You'll do all that.
Audit committee is as needed kind of thing, and we haven't had an audit committee meeting in quite a while.
But it is a policy required. We have to have somebody from the board on that one. And then the other one was just guidance, and that's a courtesy. Again, I don't know if there's been meetings on that.
Kind of depends on who's in charge of
Oh, I
that.
thought it was guidance and audit.
It's 2 separate committees. Mhm.
Would it be easier to
Guidance
get the
is-
email
I
that tells
think-
us exactly what they
think-
do?
Well, yeah, I can send you the description, yes.
Okay. Don't need to take everybody's precious time.
I did want to clarify though, Madam President, so that for our Grandview 10 vacancy is Mr. Green.
Yes. So if you're willing to do audit, Stacy, that just leaves the guidance, and then we do need a finance.
Well, I can do both of them, I guess, if they're so infrequent, the guidance and the audit.
Mhm.
Finance
You'll tell me
committee,
what I signed up
yeah,
for.
finance committee is monthly, but the other one is so much, and monthly for half an hour.
Well, I
It'd be
think you were
nice if we
saying
did have
audit and
another
guidance,
finance,
right?
because the meeting is a lot longer with just 2 people, so.
Right, so if we can get a third, it makes it much shorter. So I think Stacy was saying audit and guidance. She would take both of those. So we still need a finance committee.
Sorry, I thought I heard her say she would do that.
Audit and guidance.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood.
You takers for finance?
Jokes are good.
Jokes are good.
There's always water in the cooler.
Okay, so think about that. In the meantime, we probably are gonna need to just rotate if we don't have somebody that is willing to just take that one on, because we do need to have 3 just to make it go a little faster.
I can do finance.
Are you sure? Yeah. Okay.
I might be able to, I need to confirm that my husband will be able to pick up kids from activities, so.
I don't have to worry about picking up kids. from the police, so. If I can't be there, I'll give you a call.
Yeah, and
Kathy
Kathy
will
will
be
send out
back.
an email if somebody can't join to see if somebody else could
Okay.
could come. That's how I've been on it once, so.
Thanks, Sue.
Okay, all right. Then we only have one more thing.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I'm gonna give that to Stacy. She posted that her.
Dang.
Oh, there you go.
Second.
Let's fight over it. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you. Appreciate your time.